These 8 advanced English words will lift your fluency and your IELTS, TOEFL, or Cambridge score. And you won't just memorize them. You'll meet each one inside the story, feel what it means, then prove you caught it. That's how your brain keeps them for good. They brought Iris Halloran the painting in an armored van because if it was real, it was worth more than the building she worked in. A lost masterpiece by Aldous Crane, found in an attic after 90 years. Her job was to say whether it was genuine. By midnight, she had found the truth, and the truth would rewrite the history of art. Crane was a legend, dead these 80 years, the most celebrated painter his country had ever produced. His works hung in every great gallery, drowned in acclaim. And this new canvas was worthy of him, a glowing twilight harbor painted with such deft and certain strokes that 3 experts had already wept over it. The whole art world held its breath, waiting for Iris to crown it with her acclaim. But Iris did not weep over paintings. She studied them. For 2 days, she examined the canvas with a meticulous care that bordered on obsession. Under raking light, under a UV lamp, under a microscope. Was it authentic? Everything said yes. The aged varnish, the period frame, the very cracks in the paint all whispered that it was a true and authentic Crane. And yet, Iris had spent 30 years learning to discern the one false note in a perfect song. On the 3rd night, alone with the painting, she found it. In the bottom corner, where a fisherman's hand gripped a rope, the paint held a particular blue, a synthetic blue that no factory had made until 40 years after Crane was in his grave. It was tiny. Almost no one alive could discern it. But it was there, and it was impossible. The painting was a fake, a counterfeit, and a recent one. Iris sat back strangely shaken, not because she had caught a forgery, but because it was the finest she had ever seen. Whoever had counterfeited this Crane had not merely copied his style. They had painted a new Crane, a better Crane, with a genius that took her breath clean away. Who could do such a thing? A counterfeit this perfect was not the work of a criminal copying postcards. It was the work of someone who knew Crane's hand as well as his own, who painted perhaps as well as Crane himself ever had. And that thought led Iris somewhere she had not expected to go, into the dusty employment records of Crane's old studio. There she found a name, mentioned once and then forgotten. Thomas Reyes, studio assistant, employed for 40 years. No gallery had ever shown a Reyes. No book of art so much as named him. He was utterly obscure, one of the 1,000 obscure hands that grind the paint and stretch the canvas for the famous, and then vanish without a trace. But Iris had a feeling now, cold and certain, and she went to find him. Thomas Reyes was 91 and dying, in a bare room above a shop. When Iris set a photograph of the painting before him, the old man began, very quietly, to cry. "So they found it," he whispered. "I always wondered if anyone ever would." And then, at the very end of his life, Thomas told her the truth he had carried for 70 years. He had painted it, of course, but that was not the secret. The secret was that he had painted the others, too. For 40 years, Thomas Reyes had stood behind Aldous Crane, and the greatest works ascribed to the master, the harbor scenes the world adored, the paintings hung in palaces, had come from Thomas's brush. Crane had the name, the charm, the fame. He signed them and sold them, and was loved for them. The hand that made them was never once ascribed to the silent man in the back room. The lost masterpiece was not a crime. It was a confession in paint. Knowing he was dying, knowing his own signed work would never be looked at twice, Tomas had painted one last picture in the only name the world would ever acclaim, and let it be found so that just once, before the end, he could watch the world fall to its knees before something his own hand had truly made. Iris could have buried it. She could have stamped the canvas fake and let it quietly disappear, and no one would ever have known. But she had spent her whole life serving the truth, and she had just met the most deft painter she had ever seen, dying unknown in a rented room. So she did the braver thing. She went home, and she wrote a very different report. Iris proved, brushstroke by brushstroke, that the same meticulous hand which had painted this fake had also painted a dozen of Crane's most famous works. The blue pigment that exposed the forgery also unlocked the deeper truth. The real fraud was not the new painting, but the old signatures. The world's beloved Cranes were, in their truest sense, authentic Reyes. And at long last, they would be ascribed to the man who had actually made them. Thomas Reyes lived just long enough to see it. In his final week, the first article appeared, naming the obscure studio assistant as one of the great painters of his age. They brought him the newspaper, and he held it in his thin hands, and he smiled. The lost masterpiece had never been a counterfeit at all, Iris wrote. It was the truest thing in the entire gallery, the only painting Thomas Reyes ever signed with his own real name. Now, and did you catch all 8? Let's find out. An adjective meaning little known and hidden from public notice. Think of a tiny village that not a single map bothers to mark. Thomas the studio assistant was completely this. No gallery knew his name. He was in what kind of painter whose name no book of art had ever printed?
The word is obscure.
She quoted an obscure poet that almost no one had heard of. An adjective meaning skillful, neat, and quick with the hands. Think of a chef who bones a whole fish in 3 swift, perfect cuts. The painting was made with this kind of touch, sure and graceful. The harbor was painted with what kind of strokes that left the experts in tears.
The word is deft.
With a few deft movements, she folded the paper into a crane. A noun for loud, enthusiastic public praise and approval. It's the roar of praise a great performance wins from critics and crowds. Crane's paintings were drowned in this all across the world. The whole art world waited to crown the painting with its what? The word is acclaim. Her very first novel won huge acclaim from critics everywhere. An adjective meaning genuine and real, exactly what it claims to be. Think of a signed first edition, proven to be the true original. Iris had to decide whether the painting was this or a clever fake. Every test whispered that the canvas was a true, and what Crane.
The word is authentic.
Experts confirmed the document was authentic and many centuries old. A verb meaning to detect or perceive something fine and hard to notice. It's what a master taster does, catching one wrong note in the wine. Iris could do this with the one false note hidden in a perfect work. Almost no one alive could do what? Detect the single wrong shade of blue.
The word is discern.
In the gloom, he could just discern a figure by the door. A verb meaning to credit a work to whoever created it. It's what a museum does when it names the artist beside a picture. For years, the world did this to Crane for paintings Thomas had made. The famous works were wrongly done. What I credited to the master, not to Thomas?
The word is ascribe.
Scholars now ascribe the old play to a different writer entirely. An adjective meaning extremely careful, precise, and thorough. Think of a watchmaker checking each tiny gear under a bright glass. Iris examined the canvas with this kind of obsessive, exacting care. Her what kind of study of every crack and brushstroke took 2 long days.
The word is meticulous.
He kept meticulous records of every penny the charity ever spent. A noun for a fraudulent copy made to pass as the real thing. Think of a fake banknote printed to look exactly like real money. The dazzling painting turned out to be one of these, not a true Crane. The canvas was a what? A fraudulent copy, the finest fake that Iris had ever seen.
The word is counterfeit.
The police seized thousands of counterfeit watches at the border. Quick recap. How many do you still remember?
Obscure. Deft.
Acclaim.
Authentic. Discern. Ascribe. Meticulous. Counterfeit.
A new English story every day. Subscribe and learn advanced words the way your brain actually keeps them, inside a story you won't forget.